the way that the Muslim mayors in the UK are spreading, and the power is starting to spread. We have a Muslim mayor, as you know, in London. That's when I go down the tinfoil hat route, but I start to think perhaps that is true. Perhaps it is actually a much bigger strategic globalist plan that is about taking over Western Europe.
Yeah, and
Katie Hopkins has this rare ability to say what so many normal people are thinking, but are too scared to voice out loud. In this wide-ranging interview, she drops hard truths about what mass migration and unchecked multiculturalism are really doing to Britain. No sugarcoating, no apologies, just straight talk that's going viral because it hits home. I've been watching this stuff for years, and she's spot on about so much of it.
Stories from kids that were in politics class that said, thinking of a caller to my radio show, a mother that her son said that he supported Trump, and eventually he was bullied out of that politics class even, and told by the lecturer that he should have less radical thoughts. You know, I know a primary school that handed out Clinton mints in the playground the night before in Britain. You know, the night before, literally handed out mints with Clinton on so that the kids would know Clinton was the right answer. You know, we have kids at age 4 and 5 who had to raise their hands if their parents voted for Brexit, and they were made to feel silly and went home and said, oh, you know, we were made to feel silly in class because you were the ones that voted Brexit. So, and after Trump got in, our school children were sent home and told in primary schools, you'll go home tonight and your parents will be crying and your parents will be very upset because the wrong person won. And in this school, we don't support hate, and they're allowed to teach that. And that is a very curious thing, because whilst we're trying to embrace this kind of idea of multiculturalism and, you know, we're all equal and it's great that we have Muslims in our classes, that therefore means if Trump comes up with something labelled a Muslim ban, Trump equals hate, and the school takes that as permission to teach an entire generation of young people Trump equals hate. And that, I find that very hard, that the left tried to own the word hope and they tried to leave hate for everybody else so that I become a hate preacher. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, you gave me a lot there.
It's wild how schools and universities have become places where kids get indoctrinated instead of educated. Teachers handing out political mints, making little kids raise their hands if their parents voted Brexit, or sending them home crying because Trump won. This isn't education, it's grooming the next generation to accept one narrow worldview. I remember hearing stories like this and thinking, how did we let schools turn into political echo chambers? The left loves to talk about tolerance, but they only tolerate their own views. Anything outside that gets labelled hate. It's no wonder so many young people grow up scared to question anything.
So let's talk about Islam, because I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people are talking about it. You're talking about it a lot. So how much of this, it's hard for me sometimes when I follow certain people on Twitter to figure out how much of this stuff is actually real versus just sort of if everyone, and I'm not saying you specifically, but just people that cherry pick story, we focus on this.
Yes.
So, we hear about these rape groups now in England and that there were major cover-ups. We hear about these no-go zones. We hear about plenty of the street preachers and what's happening in the mosques and all of this stuff. I have tried incredibly hard for the years that I've been doing this show to separate the ideas of Islam, which is a set of ideas that should be criticized the same way you could criticize the ideas that are Judaism or the ideas that are Christianity or the ideas that are capitalism or anything else.
Of course.
Versus Muslims who are people, the vast majority who want the same exact things that you want and I want and everybody else. How big of an issue do you think this battle between the ideas of Islam and the West is? Or did I even frame that properly?
No, I think it's fair the way you frame it, and I think it would be a great thing if we were able to, in our daily lives, I'm talking about in the UK, if we were able to separate those two things out nice and neatly so that it was about Islam and the ideology and a criticism of that versus regular Muslims living in the UK, many of whom are working very hard. Many of them have been here for generations and just want to crack on and do the same as the rest of us, which is look after our families, worked hard and try and be vaguely healthy and happy as much as we can. But I think the problem...
Katie nails the difficulty of trying to separate Islam as an ideology from individual Muslims. In theory it sounds nice, but in practice it's almost impossible when you're living with the results every day. Most Muslims just want to live peacefully. But the constant stream of problems, grooming gangs, no-go areas, terror incidents, and demands for special treatment, makes that separation feel like wishful thinking. When you have entire communities where integration fails, and parallel societies form, You can't just keep pretending it's all fine.
Be a lot better about that argument right here in America too. So
Yes.
that's not unique to you guys, because I try to
no.
do it all the time and still get thrown in with the people that
Yes.
are not doing that. You know?
No, but I think in the UK, the problem with trying to have that kind of educated approach and that differentiation of those two positions is that when we live amongst it so much and the attacks are so relentless, it's hard. So as you're walking across, so if I think now, if I'm walking across Westminster Bridge to the House of Commons, the fact that there are these concrete bollards up that now separate people on pavements from the roads. When we go to certain junctions now, there's concrete bollards so that trucks can't drive into you when you're crossing. I think that we live amongst that so much that there's a fear of the acid attacks, where the police have just been putting out what to do in the instance of an acid attack. What to do.
Right, so this is kind of the new one now, sort of.
Yeah, so so for the evolution for us, so it was the terror attack, especially across Ramadan in the summer, that sort of peak terror for us, where we had the Manchester bomb as well. Then we had the police saying, you run, you hide, you tell. Run, hide, tell. That's the message from the police. So that was pushed out. And of course, that goes against everything inside of me that says, no, you chase them, you fight them, you try your best, you die trying. That feels more like the advice I want to hear. And there was a few people, one Millwall football supporter, who did precisely that. He fought those attackers with their knives and he got taken apart, but he survived. But anyway, run, hide, tell. That feels wrong. That's not British to me. And now we've got the latest police advice, which is for acid attacks, because the latest is to come up on a moped, squirt sulfuric acid and take people out that way. And the acid attacks are sort of, whatever it says, it's this, it's rinse, it's repeat, it's something, cover. And it's weird to me that we live in a time where that's our police advice, is about how to cope with terror and acid. I find it really hard then to differentiate, right, let's be a sensible philosophical debate about Islam versus I need a concrete bollard to get over that bridge, and here's my advice for terror. And I also think, we had surveys done, 52% of Muslims in the UK believe homosexuality should be illegal. 52% of the Muslims live, and the level of support for terror attacks from Muslims living in the UK is very high. And then, for example, when the grooming gangs attack, we have that in so many of our cities. They are coordinated, they are networked, they are devastating, and they see white girls, my daughters, as trash.
Walking around London or other British cities and seeing concrete bollards everywhere to stop trucks from ploughing into pedestrians is depressing. It feels like we've surrendered parts of our own streets and changed our way of life to accommodate problems we imported. The fact that we even need advice on surviving acid attacks in 21st century Britain shows how badly things have slipped.
Imams ever standing outside the courts to just say, not in the name of our religion. And I would have liked to see that more. I'd like to see feminists also saying this is not right, but I don't hear that. There seems to be a silence on the left about all of that.
So I think you've already answered this, but what do you think that odd alliance? I mean, I've had a zillion guests on to talk about this, but this strange alliance between feminism and Islam. I mean, there is an alliance between two things that should, by all accounts, be completely at odds with each other.
Yeah, so on the left, for me, it seems to me there is a very clear hierarchy of things you accept. So you accept on the left, first of all, multiculturalism. Like, that is your bedrock, that's the foundation of everything. That's the number one thing you have to accept. And then things fall under that in a hierarchy that we could argue about. So maybe LGBT, maybe probably Black Lives Matter goes above that. You could put the environment somewhere. This is a hierarchy. So when it comes to homophobia in the Islamic community, the Muslim community, it's still, multiculturalism still takes precedent. And that's why you have the silence. There's a thought vortex where they can't possibly stick up for, or reject or denounce the idea.
The grooming gang scandal still makes one's blood boil. Coordinated networks in so many towns targeting vulnerable white girls, treating them like trash. The silence from many imams and large parts of the left on this is deafening. It's not hysteria to be concerned about children being raped. It's called basic human decency. Yet instead of facing it head-on, we get deflection and accusations of racism. That refusal to condemn these horrors loudly and clearly damages trust more than anything.
Acceptable to be homophobic in the UK because multiculturalism and respect for the Muslim faith is higher on their hierarchy of thinking. It's a bit like Maslow's hierarchy.
Right.
It's a new hierarchy of thought.
But if it was Christians with those exact same beliefs, you would say that they're a bunch of homophobes. But for whatever reason,
the hierarchy Christians comes much lower. And in fact, just last night, I don't know what time I crawled into bed after Political. I think it was 3:30 in the morning. Don't tell my father.
Yeah.
I'm 42. So I had an email from someone asking. So people email me when they need things to be heard, or they feel so frustrated. They know that I can help give them a voice. So someone emailed me because our police very much now are pushing reporting of hate crime because they are driven to do that through their policing strategy is to push people towards reporting hate crime, which of course why you see hate crime go up. And they are kind of rewarded on achieving hate crime figures as part of their reporting. Anyway, hate crime reporting is very big in the UK. Police departments are pushing it about the right wing, not really about left, or if you've had hate, maybe someone threatened to rape you with a machete, that doesn't matter.
Not a problem.
But even if you go on to one of the police forces, I don't want to misquote it, I think it might be Bedfordshire, I'd need to double check, but when you go on and you try and log a hate crime, Christianity isn't even there. So it asks you to say your religion, whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're Muslim, whether you're whatever. Christianity's not even on the list. And I think that says something huge about the way Christianity is perceived in the UK as not even being relevant enough to be a category on a drop-down menu anymore.
The weird alliance between feminism and Islam never stops amazing me. On one hand, they march for women's rights. On the other, they stay silent when their same rights get trampled in certain communities. Multiculturalism seems to sit at the very top of their priority list, even above protecting gay people or women's safety. It's contradictory and hypocritical. We've seen this play out too many times. Principles get thrown out the window the moment Islam enters the conversation.
That these things are now truly becoming systemic, because wasn't there a story just about a month ago that the BBC specifically was telling white people not to apply to certain jobs?
Yeah, so that's something I've reported about for a while. So Creative Access, the company is called. We managed to, or I ran some things in the Daily Mail. Eventually their funding was stopped for a while, but they're back. Their funding source, they have found a new source of funding. Like I say, these viruses tend to evolve to overcome. I see myself as the antibiotic, but they evolve and they come back. So Creative Access, creative, it really is. The only colour, so it's available in any colour as long as it's not white.
Right.
Like all good vans. And I think if you're black, minority ethnic, you can apply. And one of the interesting things as well, it's always for positions where no qualifications are required either. So it's literally a free job for you. The only thing you cannot be is white, and that is to most positions for the BBC, and it's linked intrinsically through the establishment so that they're getting more representation of the sorts of faces they want.
What do you make?
The push to make certain jobs off limits to white applicants, the BBC's diversity drives, the growing influence in local politics, it all adds up to a deliberate reshaping of the country. Notice what happens when Katie talks about the bigger picture, the globalist angles, the funding trails, and the pattern of replacing populations.
These people. So I'm with you. I hear you, obviously. Most of my audience hears you.
Of course.
They get it. They've been trying to fight this leftism. You know, I told you beforehand, you know, I mean, I used to be a lefty, and now I realize that liberalism, in the way that I view it, has nothing to do with being on the left. But I try not to impugn everyone's motives.
On the road to Damascus, you had a Saul-like moment and you saw the light.
Yeah, exactly. So, although I don't know that I'd be welcome in Damascus, but we'll see. But point is that I try not to impugn everyone's motives. What do you think of the motives of these people when they sit there in that boardroom at this company and they're doing all this? You think this is just misguided craziness, or are there people that truly are trying to do what? I'm not even sure.
So there's two thoughts I have. One I don't like to imagine is true, and the other one is that it is just the correct thought, the approved mind think in the UK in terms of that hierarchy of thinking. The approved mind think is multiculturalism. The BBC achieves funding if it ticks its multiculturalism and multicultural objectives. And as we look to see how that maps out through the things that we see, we read, we watch, we see more and more of the faces that we're supposed to accept. So that's my surface level interpretation. It's correct groupthink, and it's approved think. My more sinister interpretation that I don't like to go near because it sends me down to the tinfoil hat brigade and it makes me very concerned, is that it's part of a wider, approved and Soros-backed movement of people that is accept that the world is changing, accept mass migration of the third world to the first.
So this is when...
Whether it's fully coordinated or just ideological blindness, the result is the same. Ordinary British people are watching their country slip away, while being told they're the problem for noticing. As one commenter put it years ago, we need more Katies, strong women who love their country and aren't afraid to speak up.
Alex Jones talks about the globalist, though, right? That's
Yes,
that's version of this.
Yes, which, and I watch and I try and do the thing you talked about. So I do try and discipline myself. I always ask myself, what would someone else say? What would someone that hated me say? What would my husband say? Like, my husband is the opposite of me.
Yeah.
He's known as Lovely Mark. He wears soft shoes. He's got an earring. He votes Labour. I said I would leave the country if Labour got in. He went straight down to that polling station and voted Labour.
Oh,
so I think to myself, what would Mark say? I try it out. But my point is, I think that the thoughts of people that talk about globalisation, the Soros-backed takeover of the first world, of Europe, I believe that may be the true interpretation of why this is being forced through the establishment. And I see that in all different ways. So I have travelled to Sweden and seen and been through no-go Malmo, through the no-go zones, and seen women that are too frightened to go out at night because it's terrifying there. I just came back from Libya and the Med, watching and plotting on the satellite tracking data, as well as standing at the ports, interviewing individuals, to watch the NGO ferries leave, watch the tugboat come out. So the NGO ferry goes over, the tugboat comes out from the Libyan shore, drops something in the water and goes back, and then the NGO boats all came back, 2,500 migrants into Sicily during the week that I was there. I watched this, I see these faces coming to us through creative access where only black people are acceptable. And then I also see that the mayoral positions in the UK, which it's much easier to get a mayor in that you specifically want to get. The way that the Muslim mayors in the UK are spreading and the power is starting to spread. We have a Muslim mayor, as you know, in London. Mm-hmm. That's when I go down the tinfoil hat route, but I start to think perhaps that is true. Perhaps it is actually a much bigger strategic globalist plan that is about taking over Western Europe.
Yeah, and
Katie's message resonates because she says what so many of us feel. Britain welcomed people in good faith, but that generosity has been abused. The refusal to integrate, the demands for change, the grooming scandals, the terror threats, the no-go areas are not imaginary. They're real, documented problems. The defensive playbook of labels, guilt trips and deflection has run its course. People are waking up. They want their country back. Safe streets, fair treatment, and the right to speak honestly without fear.
Books over there, who's my favorite scientist of all time and one of my favorite thinkers, and he would, as I quote all the time, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, I think about a lot of that stuff too. I have plenty of guests that think about it. And then, the other part of me wants that evidence, but perhaps you just don't get it in that.
Well, I think you find not the big picture evidence, but you can find small pieces of the puzzle. And in a way, that's what I've spent, I suppose, the last 12, 18 months doing, is just going to the jungle in Calais and watching the truckers, under tear gas, watching the migrants get on the backs of trucks, spending 48 hours in a truck, seeing truckers have their paths blocked by trees being felled so the migrants could get on the lorries, going to the Med. I'm just gesturing at your world map. People wondering.
Over there somewhere.
Over there. Your world map. I've been to the Med. I don't know if it is over there. But to watch the NGO ferry boats arriving that are also funded through ways we can track the funding, to see these pieces, to go to Sweden where the Liberals want to tell you it's all fine, but actually you go to no-go Malmo and I'm the only girl and I got told to go suck your mum, because I was even daring to be out after 5 o'clock at night. And you start to piece together these bits of the jigsaw and you start to see that maybe that picture does add up to something quite a bit darker than you might like to think. It's almost too sinister to go there. Because you wonder then, I'm a mom, I've got 3 children, they are 12, 11 and 8. You do then wonder, what does that mean for the country that you believed in so passionately, you wanted to be in the military to defend it. So
the left's hierarchy of values puts multiculturalism above everything, even above protecting their own daughters or basic British freedoms. That's not compassion, it's surrender dressed up as virtue. Katie Hopkins calls it out without apology, and that's why her message hits so hard and keeps going viral. Britain doesn't need more guilt or more concrete bollards. It needs honesty, courage, and leaders willing to put British people first again. Do you think Katie is right about the direction Britain is heading, or are these concerns overblown? Be honest in the comments. If you're tired of watching your country change for the worse while being told to stay quiet, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this. We need way more straight talk like this.